Housing in Fort Worth, regional field office. My bio probably was forwarded to you. So I've worked in Texas for years, in San Antonio. So, I have a lot of experience with the vouchers program. So in terms of this subject, what we're going to discuss as far as roundtable, any issues that people have, concerns with Texas jurisdiction? Because one thing I noticed, like since this year, calendar year, Texas has done well. The rental market, I think, is well in terms of lease up. I used to work in Louisiana, prior to coming here, a few weeks ago.
Lola and Ziggy, get over here. Lola, get over here.
Somebody's got a dog or something. I hope that's a dog being chastised. But so the vouchers program, again, is the biggest program in the country, in Texas, as far as the funding. But what is it? I want to know what challenges that you've had in your respective jurisdictions in terms of the vouchers program, specifically this calendar year, 2020, in terms of utilization of funds, some of the impact with the COVID-19, being able to conduct inspections or things of that nature. I know they put a moratorium on some of that, but I'd just like to hear some feedback from others.
Would you like them to unmute themselves and ask, or would you prefer them to use the chat?
I prefer them to unmute themselves. I prefer to talk.
Okay.
You have to pardon me. Zoom, we use a thing called Teams. It's similar, but I'm not really familiar with the intricacies of Zoom.
Okay. So if you guys want to answer his questions or have an input, just unmute yourselves and have a discussion.
Myron, this is Joe, and I'm the Deputy Director. Good afternoon. In San Antonio. I guess at this time of the year, most PHAs with respect to their HCV program are approaching the end of the calendar year. Hopefully what's been happening during the year is that PHAs have been monitoring and understanding where they're projecting their end of year position to be, so that we want to make sure PHAs are not projecting any kind of shortfall. If PHAs are in that situation, just recommend reaching out to your local HUD office. I know in San Antonio, our team members, and I'm sure the same is true in the other Texas offices, have been monitoring this for our Texas PHAs, but we're always available if you have specific questions. The other thing with Byron was mentioning the CARES Act, some housing authorities have taken advantage of some additional funding that has been provided for PHAs that have experienced increased costs, increased per unit cost that are more than 2%, would allow a PHA to be eligible to apply for the funding. And I think there's an upcoming deadline at the end of this month, October 31st, to apply for that funding. I don't know if we have any PHAs, on the phone that have already applied that might want to kind of speak to that process. I think it's pretty simple and straightforward, but I think it's something worth looking into if you're not sure. It doesn't take very long. to see whether you're eligible for that funding and might be able to receive some additional program funds this year.
Yes, that's a great point. Some of those have had so-called projected shortfalls, the different set asides. And again, that's for the HAP, Housing Assistance Payments funding. The utilization of HAP funding for Texas, I say Houston, jurisdiction, and the markets are, they're different, obviously, but Houston jurisdiction seems to, all of them do well in terms of, utilizing at least 98% or more. But I know Houston is like in the hundreds, which is great as long as, they don't over-release for the calendar year and don't get into a shortfall. But Texas does very well. I was just interested in hearing some feedback if anybody had challenges administratively, because I can tell you in Louisiana, which is one of the first states to report high cases in COVID, I know it had an impact on the operations in terms of being able to conduct briefings for voucher participants, things of that nature, annual reexamination, et cetera. Some of them literally weren't even going to the offices themselves, because they were afraid. So I know they had a small impact in Louisiana jurisdiction. I'm just curious, in Texas, did any of you ever have that challenge, and what did you do to overcome it?
Tough crowd today.
Right after lunch.
Pretty small group here. So yeah, if we can make this conversation, I think it'd be more interesting to everybody. I was curious to hear from folks kind of along the lines Byron's talking about. When we had the eviction moratorium, there was a lot of fear that, certainly I had fear that some tenants who could pay rent would choose to use their money elsewhere and then put themselves in a situation where once the eviction moratorium passed, that Section 8 landlords may begin evicting on large scale because people had, taken advantage of the opportunity to be able to not be evicted if you didn't pay your rent on the short term. And so, shortly after that eviction moratorium passed, we had Texas passed eviction restrictions, and then the CDC, and so a lot, ample confusion out there about whether you can evict or not evict, or certainly some state of flux there a little bit. But I'm curious, what's the turnover looking like for our Section 8 agencies? Is it more or less the same? What are the challenges you're encountering right now?
This is Lisa Garcia in Austin, Texas. We haven't seen a huge increase in like terminations or people leaving the program because we're adjusting the rents. We're fortunate that we're on an online platform, so we're a little different. So we've been able to sort of keep up with things, but we haven't really experienced a big increase in terminations. We did see an increase in interim changes around, I think it was April, May, some into June, but now it's sort of leveled off a bit. So I think we got right after March, and we saw a big spike. Our per unit cost increased significantly since March by about $40 per unit. So we're very thankful that HUD released the CARES Act HAP funds and made those available. And we did apply for the extraordinary circumstances. And we're very pleased that very quick response from HUD in releasing the HAP, which we had fallen into a shortfall status because of the increased HAP cost. And that additional.
Right. So you were in that first cohort that if you had increased costs and you're facing potential shortfall, you get your money pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, we got it really quick. I mean, it seemed like I put the application and we had it the next week. So it was very, very quick
And
response.
then the other folks,
Go
so
ahead.
there's another round for those that you had insignificant increased costs, but maybe you're not shortfall. That group would be funded next. So if folks haven't applied, and what my understanding, Lisa, is for like even for you guys, if your costs increase another 2%, you could come back for a second slice of pie. Is my understanding.
And I've already submitted
But it
that.
would have to increase subsequent.
Yeah, we
Okay,
did.
so you've already
I already
reapplied.
sent that
You're way
in.
ahead.
Yeah, because it went up. It went up again when from the first time I submitted it to August. It went up another. I can't remember, $10 or $15 per unit cost. So I already submitted that, and the application was very easy. So I appreciate that. That particular application was easy to put together. You really just have to really put down you need it, and then your current per unit cost from your last month. So if anybody on the call hasn't submitted that and you're falling into that situation, I encourage you to submit it because it was really, really easy to do that.
And Lisa, you said you guys are doing things virtually. Are you doing virtual inspections? What are you doing on inspections?
Yeah, so on inspections, for initial inspections, if they're vacant units, we've been going ahead and we didn't stop on those. We continue to inspect those. So we go in and inspect them. The inspectors wear masks and gloves and so forth, but they're for vacant units. So we have not slowed down on that. We happen to be, we were doing inspections annually. So we just indicated that we would change to the biannual schedule for inspections. So we, still be in compliance. So that was fortunate. So we didn't have to make a big decision on the annual inspection. So we just switched to a biannual schedule. However, what we recently put in place, because we didn't want to go into the occupied units, is we recently put in place a virtual inspections procedures. And we will use a GoToMeeting platform so we can record the inspections. And we did try a few of them out already, and we're going to be launching that in October and start doing some annual inspections using that platform.
It will be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, we'll see. The biggest challenge, of course, we have done a few of them, is just, and I know HUD's talking about looking at that for REAC inspections. I heard that on a recent, a recent call. The challenge that we've seen, because we were trying to do some virtuals before, was just getting whoever's there, the owner or the tenant to have the equipment and training them on it, to be able to walk through it. So we'll see. What we're going to do is test it out on a project-based voucher contract. So it's at a particular property. It should be relatively easy. Their efficiency or one-bedroom units, so it should be relatively easy to do. And that way the inspectors can test the equipment out with a manager on site, so that we can work out any kinks and have that done prior to doing anything on a wider scale.
Wow, Lisa, it sounds like Austin is truly have pivoted under the COVID-19 pandemic situation. So that is fantastic. Anybody else have had to pivot and want to share with us on any challenges that you're having with HCV?
So, Lorraine, I would just add that I've also spoken to PHAs that have had to use flexibility in terms of getting an owner just to self certify initially in a situation where there was concern about COVID and the physical inspection. But I believe there's a requirement with that, within a certain period of time, the housing authority would have to go back out to follow up on that certification. But as long as there were no emergency health and safety type issues, they were able to accept a certification from an owner to get somebody into a unit initially.
Hey, seeing Lorraine's name there, I want to make sure we don't miss a chance to plug the Foster Youth Initiative. And those of you who haven't considered that, program where you're helping foster kids who may be aging out, at risk of homelessness, aging out of foster care. Some of them might be school age, going to college. It's a great program. I think we're starting to get some real traction. And so, Lisa, you guys have not historically been allowed to apply for that because you have a family unification program, but that's changing now. Correct, Lorraine? Where if you have family you can still apply for the foster youth. And I don't remember when it's.
Yes, the new notice has. Thank you so much, David. San Antonio Partners. I'm Lorraine. I'm from the Houston office. And that is correct. We have a new notice out, and we are enabling those with Housing Choice Voucher programs to apply. So take a look at the notice. And if you are eligible, please put in an application. We are really, really pushing hard on homeless youth. Homelessness in general, but homeless youth, we really need to help them if we can to get a place to go. And it's just fantastic that the department is devoting vouchers to you to assist, as long as you come up with the proper partnerships and you have a need in your community. So thanks for considering. And if you need more information, your local field office will be happy to send that to you. Each field office has.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, so each field office has been designated a foster youth point of contact. And if you reach out to either the directors on the call, to David Byron or myself, we will get you that information as well.
And where we've seen that really get traction, I think, is where there becomes a good local partnership, right? The referring agency, HHS, ARM, Child Welfare Agency. When you get a personal relationship, then it seems to really take off. Our flow of information down through different federal agencies isn't always at the same pace. So some of the local child welfare agency representatives are very familiar. Others are less familiar. But if you can connect at the local level, that seems to be a key to making this work.
And what was the deadline date for applying for those additional vouchers? Do you know, Lorraine?
I will double check the notice, but it normally has been previously on a rolling basis, because it takes a while to establish your partnership with your coordinating committee and to get all those documents together. So it's sort of a rolling open basis at this point.
Yeah, as you get a referral, Lisa, then you paperwork goes to HUD and they issue a voucher for 3 years for that particular individual or family, and so it's first come first serve. I know San Marcos, not too far down the road from you, has about 20 families they were already assisting through this program, or 20 individuals. So as you get a referral, it's the vouchers are issued, one for each referral.
Okay.
David, I would just add, so you know, Lisa, each office in San Antonio, we have Brenner Stiles on our team that's heading up this effort, has been in contact with the state. And so in terms of facilitating those partnerships and connecting the PHA with the correct partner that would be able to coordinate on referrals, we're kind of bridging that for the PHAs. So it's very much a cooperation and a cooperative effort. So I think if you would contact Brenner in our office, we can follow up and help you.
And who was that? I haven't worked with.
Yeah, no worries. It's Brenner,
Okay.
Brenner.
Could you
We can-
email that to me later, just so I have it, so that we can reach out?
Absolutely. Yes.
We have a great partner in Austin. I know LifeWorks, and we've done a lot in Austin with foster youth, and that definitely interested in exploring this.
Okay, I'll send you the contact information.
Thanks, Joe.
What other questions, challenges, issues with HCV?
I had a question on the mobility demonstration application. Did that get extended to December 14th, the application period for that?
I am not certain. I'd have to look it up, Lisa. Did anybody else know?
I saw somewhere that it was, because it was, I think, October 14th. And then I saw something that, I think it was on the HUD site, or maybe it was a NARO site, that said that they were considering extending it to December 14th.
We can find out for you and get back to you, Lisa.
Thank you. I had a question. It's not really necessarily voucher related, but do you know, is there any, I just have a general concern about what's going to happen when the eviction moratorium is over the end of December. And I know HUD's put together a really good toolkit with regards to eviction prevention, but the CDC moratorium really expands out to, everyone. So those that don't have any kind of rental assistance, with public housing and the rental assistance programs, we cover it with interim changes, but I would imagine we're going to see a lot of back rent owed, come January, and people struggling for that, to pay that. And I know this isn't really, it's a funding issue. It's probably through Congress to get money for that. But I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. Have you had any conversations or heard any, concerns about that, or any thoughts from HUD? I'm really concerned, because that's a national.
Yeah, I think it's a great issue, Lisa. And really, we have not seen anything nationally. What we've seen is all the efforts that are happening at the state, really the local level. I was going to say state and local, but at the local level. And I guess that's a big question, right? If you keep pushing this out and back rent keeps accumulating, at what point is there some funding source to come in and provide some relief? But we haven't seen anything, I guess, specifically on the national level at this point. It's a concern.
Hey, Lisa, I just looked up that mobility demonstration, and there was a notice issued extending that deadline to December 14th.
Okay, great. Thank you. Do you know of any in Texas that are doing that have that from previously? I know there's some, like Seattle has done one and so forth, but do you know of any, Baltimore?
I do not.
Okay.
Anybody have any?
Questions?
I have one more question. You know, the VASH, on the VASH program, I know they had issued out that interest notice, and you had to submit in your interest for new additional VASH vouchers by a certain date. And we've already done that with the support letter from the VA. And I heard the VA, I wasn't on the meeting, but what's the next step with that? Is it the VA talks to HUD and then some notices will come out with regards to that? And that was issued out earlier in the year. And I know we already submitted our interest with the support. I just don't know when those awards.
And Lisa, yeah, what I would tell you is that at the local field office level, we're not really privy to see how the decisions are being made. We find out about it, as housing authorities do, but we do know and we do understand that requirement was put in place a few years back, which I know we've had discussions on the local level about that needing the VA support and that letter of support. So it is still a requirement. That information does get moved up to headquarters, and then at some point we find out, what the allocation was for each year. So that's about all I can tell you.
Okay, I just wondered if, because we already put that in this, I think it was, I can't remember what the date was. I know we already submitted that. The VA did give us a letter of support. We're just sort of waiting to see what happens. And I'm assuming we don't have to do anything else. It was just that interest letter is what it was said in the original notice. So I was just curious.
Yes.
All right. In an effort to stimulate a little conversation, Lisa, I'm going to put you on the spot. So some of the housing authorities on the call may have both public housing and Section 8, may be in varying stages of repositioning or considering repositioning. Austin has basically gone full, getting out of the public housing business. It's kind of just being finalized now, but you guys chose to go PBRA through where you have HAP contracts with multifamily. And so then you'll have your normal Section 8 program, which is pretty large. You guys have a decent already kind of non-profit inventory and different programs that are a little bit broader than most housing authorities. But I'm curious what you're hearing internal with the agency. No, I'm putting you on the spot, but how is that? Is there any regrets to that? Is it working out? What are you hearing about the choice to reposition?
Well, I think the choice to reposition was a great choice. I mean, I think we're very happy about that, overall. Of course, the efforts to do it, it's not easy. It takes a lot of effort. But I think we're definitely happy that we did move that direction. The properties have been able to, be enhanced and just provide a better place for families to live, and that's been awesome. The ability to do redevelopment at some of the oldest public housing properties in Texas has also been great, where we have Chalmers East ready to be completed in the next couple months. We'll be moving families in there, and then Chalmers West will be starting construction on that the first part of the year. And we finished out Goodrich, and it's just being able to increase the number of affordable housing units too has been great through the redevelopment. So I think overall it's been awesome. We're fortunate that we have a larger agency in the ability to have a team that helps work on this. I would say for smaller agencies to really I'm really impressed with what HUD has done in terms of providing additional tools and different ways to do repositioning. And I think looking at what those other tools are, and you might want to visit on that just briefly. But I think every organization is different, so you really have to look at your unique situation and what's going to work best for your organization. We picked PBRA because we have done it before. We have staff that were familiar with that process because we have the contract for the state of Texas and Arkansas monitoring that. So we're familiar with that. I think, I'm not sure what the pros and cons are of either one are, going PBV or PBRA. I have a feeling PBV might be a little easier if you already have a voucher program and if you're not familiar with PBRA, because it is a little different, and it can be a little challenging. There's a little more, there can be a little more restrictions. So, but I think it's an individual decision. So organizations and agencies really have to look at their unique situation and, meet with their board, do the projections, the long-term planning, and to be able to make that decision and look at some of the additional tools that have been put in place, over the last couple of years that really provide just a whole lot of more opportunities and options for housing authorities.
Thank you.
Those are some great tips. And you said something that truly struck me, and I wanted to make sure that I reinforce it, about getting people the buy-in. So you have to get the buy-in of the board. And HUD has, I'm sure your board is probably taking it, for those who are not aware, we have free called Lead the Way training. And it has a lot of board tools, techniques, and videos that they can utilize and get free training on considerations for the board, along with a lot of repositioning information on our website as well.
So what about there are other PHA folks on the call? What kind of topics? Jim, who are you with? Sorry, I now lost my names here. Jim Morris. Jim, who are you with?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm one of the vendor sponsors. I just came on just to
okay.
observe and maybe learn something. So I work for a company called Dynatouch.
All right. Well, Betty, I see Betty Brewer on there. Betty, are you doing anything with the foster youth stuff? Have you tried that yet? I know you have some students in your area. What are the challenges, questions you're encountering?
I'm not doing it yet. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
You've experienced some cost unit fluctuations, right, that have added challenges. Have you pursued the what Lisa was talking about earlier? I know there's the shortfall funding that you automatically get considered for, but in addition to that, applying for the funding, have you applied for the funding?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
So the good news is it could potentially solidify your program in future years, right? Because then your renewal funding gets higher, and so it's a great opportunity. It doesn't come along very often. So was it difficult to apply?
No, not at all.
And you already got the funds, or you're waiting?
Not yet. I just saw they'd posted that they had more money for us now. In the letter I got today, or text.
Okay.
They said how much money they were getting. I don't remember how much it was. And I haven't done the other program, the foster. Our school, PSTC, they have lost most of their teachers, so they're not due to the pandemic. And I don't know what's going on at our school now.
Well,
it's pretty sad.
It's too bad.
Yes, it is.
Let's see who else we have here. Cassandra, who are you with? Did I pronounce that right, Cassandra?
Yes, you did. You're the first one that did pronounce my name right. I'm with Oakland, Texas Council of Government in Texarkana, Texas. I'm a housing specialist. I've been doing this maybe about 2.5 years, so I'm kind of new.
Okay. What do you work in? What do you do specifically in the voucher program?
I distribute out vouchers to tenants, and we've doing virtual inspection, because I do know the inspectors are doing the virtual inspection now. So we are not seeing any tenants at this moment. We're just mainly doing stuff online, emailing and phone calls.
Okay. See David Cortez on. David, any challenges you want to talk about or questions?
There.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I've kind of been out of the HCV program for a while. I've been really doing more on the community development. But what I have been diving into is when we do convert into the project-based vouchers from public housing. There are some challenges, but the program is basically the same as the HCV for, some minor adjustments. But I'm looking forward when we do convert our first property, that's the Palmville 1 and 2. Those are the oldest communities that we have. But as far as what you've been discussing on the foster youth and all, let me defer that to Yvette, because she does have, I believe she did apply for some of those vouchers, and I see her on there. So let me let her tell you about that.
Thanks, David. This is Yvette. Yes, we did apply and get approved to participate in the FYI program. We're just waiting to hear back from, I'm assuming the social workers or the BCFS, so they can start sending us the youth, so that the foster youth, so that we can start assisting them. We already went ahead, our board approved last month our admin plan, so that we can make that part of our program, and looking forward to seeing what kind of impact we're going to have on this group of youngsters.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing that.
And I think yesterday there were some questions that came up on the public housing session about PBVs. And this morning I did see and got a copy of the HUD, the RAD PBV quick reference guide. It's a quick guide, but it's like 50 pages long, because there's a lot to that program. So we'd be happy to share that. There's also one for PBRA for anyone who's interested. I think you can also find a lot of these types of resources on the HUD website, just searching RAD.
So David, you mentioned something about converting to PBV, and we're kind of had an interesting call earlier this week. It's kind of an interesting transition. So if you're going repositioning with public housing, and one day this tenant is a public housing resident, and they're used to calling HUD and saying, hey, the housing authority didn't, the landlord didn't do what they're supposed to do. And we reach out to housing authority, say what's going on, say the water heater's not working, whatever. And now you've converted to PBV, and that same tenant in that same unit calls HUD and says, hey, my water heater's not working. And kind of that transition for not just the tenants, but HUD staff and everybody will say, well, you need to contact the landlord. You need to start with the landlord. And if the landlord doesn't respond, then you need to contact the housing authority. If the housing authority doesn't respond as the HAP contract administrator, then contact HUD. So it's kind of, it puts us one more step removed. And I think kind of adjusting to how that we're going to handle that, and recognizing that transition is new for us. Like we just had one where, a fair housing complaint that normally fair housing is used to citing the housing authority for, as the public housing unit owner, you didn't do this reasonable accommodation correct. And so they're doing their fair housing investigation. They're ready to cite, and the housing authority says, why are you listing me? Take my name off of that. That's the nonprofit owner you should be citing. Well, the nonprofit's part of the housing authority too. So it's kind of there's just some unique, interesting things that transition that's going to occur where I think we're still trying to figure out how that's going to work, right? And understanding, like, when we call the housing authority, am I calling to speak to the voucher administrator, or am I calling to speak to the nonprofit management company? In some cases, it's one person has two name tags, right? So anyway, interesting transition for a lot of us. I see Billy on the phone. Is that Billy Shelburne? I don't know too many Billies.
Yes, it is.
How you doing, Billy?
I'm doing
What you
great.
got
How
going?
are you, David?
Good. You're going through a unique thing, right? You're going to take on some more vouchers.
I'm in it, and I'm working.
Tell us.
I don't have much time,
Tell us about that.
but it's going good. It's going good.
So
I
Billy,
got the
Billy's going
additional.
to take over administering vouchers for a neighboring PHA that's going to get out of the business altogether, right?
That's correct. They no longer are with HUD in any way. They're just a nonprofit organization now that does tax credits, and they do. They go in and now they've started doing USDA. They're helping or doing their whatever you call to get into theirs, doing their work for them. And so he's just gotten he's gotten out of HUD. He doesn't want to mess with David anymore.
Well, I understand that. That makes perfect sense.
No, I'm just
yeah. So it's like a lot of small voucher agencies. Sometimes, it can be hard to cash flow a small voucher program. You guys, we have some small PHAs on the line. So in this case, it might be a win-win where Billy gets to increase the size of Burnett voucher program a little bit and achieve some more economy of scale. And Marble Falls Housing Authority can go focus on the things that they do best and avoid, they found themselves in a situation where it was hard to manage the voucher program for the admin fees earned. So hopefully it turns out a win-win, but it's like that repositioning and there's a lot of work in it. Billy, hopefully it won't be as hard as getting an easement approved, but
no, it has not. And that's the reason I'm still
you.
thinking about the Section 18. But every time I think about it, I think about how long it took for me to sell 5.65 acres.
Well, so I shouldn't have pulled the string on that one. That was just kind of an inside deal. Billy had a case where the city wanted to put a sidewalk in on the property, and it became rather cumbersome to get through the approval process, but we got it done.
Yes, we did.
Thank you for hanging in.
David is great. I hear you're coming back to San Antonio.
I am back. Byron is now running Fort Worth.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad you're home.
Thank you. Who else have we missed here? Edia, I'm going to mess that one up. Ms. Madero?
Yes, sir. I'm here. I'm from Odessa, Texas. I'm with the Odessa Housing Authority, and I'm a caseworker / inspector here.
So pronounce your first name for me.
It's Edia.
Edia, okay.
Yes, sir.
You have anything you want to talk about or ask us about?
No, I'm just here to listen to you guys. I'm here to listen to the experts.
So on them doing their inspections, what do they do them by camera?
Yeah, Lisa, when you were saying you guys are going to do, you're going to pilot that, I was curious too, who's going to be in the unit with the equipment to what did you describe? You're going to do it via some electronic medium.
Right.
Video.
We're doing it through a GoToMeeting platform where you can record so they're going to get invited to basically a meeting, like similar. You could do it through Zoom too, because I know it looks like this is being recorded. So you have to find a specific, platform that we're trying it through GoToMeeting. So we train.
Is that dependent on the tenant having a computer and some technological skills, or is that the landlord? Who's going to be on the inside of the unit?
So we're gonna, more than likely, it'll be the landlord, but in some cases it could be the tenant if they had it on their phone. But that's the thing; it is going to take some. It's not always going to work. Not everybody's going to have the ability to do it. So we're going to try it out, like I said, first with a property that we know they have the equipment. So yes, they would need basically a phone is what you would need, and a smartphone to be able to walk through the unit. So they'll walk through the unit with the inspector and go through each, specific room, and then it will be recorded and it'll be saved as well for a record. But I'll have more information after we start doing it in about 2 weeks.
I guess that's the future, right? Whether it's COVID driven or not, this technology is not going anywhere.
David, this is Yvette. We've been doing our initial inspections via FaceTime because we utilize iPads here. And so we've been doing our virtual inspections since like the beginning of the waivers, whenever the first ones came out in April, stating that could be an alternative. And so far it's been working out well for us. We're going to be going back out like in January to physically inspect the units. But right now, because we want to get people housed, we've been using FaceTime on our iPads, and then we can save that video to the iPad. And we engage with the landlord most of the time, not so much the resident when it comes to doing the initial inspection.
That's cool. I guess this creates some additional staff stress for some of your staff. If you have staff like me, I'm not sure how to take a selfie with my camera phone. I could probably turn that around if I ever wanted to take a selfie, but technology is not my thing. And that's a joke, by the way. I know how to do that, but I'm sure it puts some stress under folks who, the technology is not their strong suit, and but it's all around us, right? And so you just have to adjust.
Yeah, well, you'd be surprised. Actually, it was a landlord that showed one of the girls in the Section 8 department how to do something on an Android phone. And so sometimes we're finding that they're more savvy than we are, and they're teaching us. But the ladies that work in Section 8 are millennials, so they've got it down pretty pat.
Yeah, that group's got it down, and even some of the grandmothers club are better with this technology, but there's some of us caught in between those two groups that struggle with it a little more. I know one of the topics we talked about on one of our Fort Worth calls, that was, this dilemma when you're trying to maintain good relationships with landlords and a tenant moves out suddenly at the end of the month without notice. The HUD regs are pretty clear that you cannot pay any HAP for the month after which the tenant moved. So it's kind of a tricky thing, because even if a tenant says I'm moving out on, let's say they give notice to move out on the 15th of the month, and then they vacate the unit on the 28th. Well, technically per the reg, you're not supposed to pay that next month's HAP. Seems kind of unreasonable. The lease is ending on the 15th, and so you know, that should be a rare occurrence, hopefully, but I know it's one of those tricky things where landlords feel like, hey, this is your program's supposed to follow the private rental market. In the private rental market, tenants, you know, responsible for rent through the, I expect rent through the 15th if the lease ends on the 15th, and I expect it not only from the tenant, but from the housing authority. But we can't necessarily do that. So just so everybody knows that the reg is pretty clear on that. A lot of times we don't know, you guys don't know, and the landlord doesn't know that the tenant vacated. And so once you find out they vacated, it's often in the last month of the lease, and so it's not an issue. But there's still some challenges with the programs and trying to make it where it's not more difficult for a landlord than it is on the private market, because we need landlords to make this thing work. Trying to think of other questions that may have come up that are be of interest. Guys, you guys getting many VAWA challenge? You know, I know there was a lot of concern that when VAWA came out. So, for instance, first of all, under Violence Against Women Act, a person could say, yes, I violated some rules that might normally be grounds for terminating me, but that's because I was a victim of violence. I'm protected under VAWA. So, a tenant normally abandons a unit, leaves without paying rent. That could impede, those lease violations could impede their ability to continue in the voucher program at another property. But if they come in and say, well, yes, I did abandon the unit, I didn't pay the last month's rent, it's because my live-in husband, spouse, whoever, took my money and threatened my life, and I had to leave in the night. So now you have to consider under VAWA, right? Let that person continue in the program. Are you guys getting many of those complaints where somebody says, hey, I want an exception under VAWA? And how's that working out?
I don't think they all know that rule yet. To keep them on the program.
I think you're probably right. There's some times under which we're supposed to, under the rule, when a housing authority has to notify tenants of their VAWA rights. There's several iterations. And so it really is incumbent on us to make sure they know. We don't want to encourage people to take advantage of a loophole where it's not really a valid claim, but you have some limited ability. If you get one of those VAWA claims, just know you're not allowed to do an investigation, right? You can't say, well, I'm going to look into this. I'm going to do a little snooping around, see if this is true, or if you're just trying to get away. So it's pretty, you have pretty narrow things you can do once you get that VAWA complaint or VAWA challenge. If you get one of those and it's your first one, certainly encourage you to talk with the HUD staff to know what you have the right to ask for and what you don't. It's really largely up to the tenant what they provide to you to support their VAWA claim. You can't say, give me a police report. They can give you a police report, but you can't require it. So if you haven't encountered VAWA and you get somebody citing VAWA, we'd be happy to give you a quick education to try and help keep you out of trouble.
David, so what do you do in a situation like that when you have a female that, you know, she's claiming VAWA, but yet she continues to let her person back into the home, and then it becomes to where now it's not only becoming a physical threat to her, but maybe also to the neighbors because the violence spills out into the front yard or into the next door neighbor's house because she's running there for help. I mean, how do we handle situations like that?
Pretty tough. My recollection, and I hate to ad lib this because I don't have it in front of me, but if you give, so first of all, if you say, Yes, I'm a victim of VAWA, and I had to flee the unit because I was in fear for my life, and that may be true. But if you're being evicted for other reasons, so let's say the landlord says, yes, you had an unauthorized live-in for 4 months, and that's why I'm evicting you. Well, VAWA may not protect you for that, right? Because now could you argue, yes, I didn't want the person there. I was captive. I was in fear. It's a tricky one, that unauthorized. But I do think you have some ability once you consider the VAWA, if you're allowing that to require that they not allow that person back into their household, right? And if they do, then a future complaint, they're on their own. But on the short term, I think, because that's going to happen after the VAWA, right? Because even if they're still letting the person live there, they may be saying, look, I don't have anywhere to go. I don't want the person there, but what can I do? So it's really tricky area. Almost have to get into the specifics of the instance, and I'd want to look at our guidance and talk with our fair housing staff before giving you too much direction on that. It's tricky business. What I would say, and what I've always said at these trainings, is we're going to have some cases where people take advantage of VAWA to get protection or to get exceptions maybe they didn't deserve. But I think we want to risk on the side of caution, right? We'd rather grant it when it wasn't appropriate than deny it when it was needed. Because if somebody, this could cost somebody their life, or just a lot of bad things could happen if we deny it. So it's one of those, we give a lot of, the whole rule is designed to give a lot of benefit of the doubt. And so we just have to kind of live with some risk of, there's some loopholes in it. It's not perfect, but the intent is to make sure we protect folks. So like a lot of reasonable accommodation stuff, I think what I would tell PHAs on reasonable accommodation, you have to make the determination. And VAWA, by the way, is a form of reasonable accommodation. If I were running a housing authority and I got into the gray area, I would probably grant the accommodation, because it's the risk to my business, to my agency of not granting it is too much. And I've got to make business decisions at times to say, okay, we'll grant this, right? I have some reservations whether it's legitimate, but you've got me into the gray area, approved. Now you have to decide, right? But there can be some significant financial penalties if you deny one and it's determined to be improper. And even if you prevail, once you've gone through a substantial fair housing investigation, the amount of staff hours and money you have tied up in just complying with the investigation, that's a business thing you have to think about. So I would just always say, if you find yourself in the gray area, might be in your interest to go ahead and give them the benefit of the doubt. No, that didn't help you a lot, Lisa.
All right, guys, we're hitting the 2 o'clock mark here. So if you guys have any more questions that you would like answered before we end up this session, now would be the time.
And if you have questions after you get off this call, make us earn our paycheck. So give our staff a call, pose the questions. If you think you've got an answer that doesn't sound right, challenge it, question it, and we'll talk about it some more.